one of the things about that I have been reading about is in neuroscience, like we know now that having goals in our lives is really, it's not just like making your life successful. There's really a process behind our brains, like seeking goals, and our brains are actually targeted toward, goals, future movements, whatever. And if you don't have that target, they just become aimless, right? And so it's all about when you set a goal, you're setting a target for something to shoot for, and our brains kind of get this dopamine response when we achieve little steps along the way. And so then that keeps feeding that, and that keeps feeding that. And so, there's actual science now behind goal setting. It used to just be, yes, in your career, whatever. But now they found that there's actually like a real reason. You become aimless otherwise, right? You look for Instagram likes, or you look for Facebook likes, and you get these little dopamine spikes, but they don't really get you to where you want to go. So now, it used to be back in the day that this neuroscientist that I listened to talked about when, let's say a dog, but same with humans, that they get on a trail for food. Okay. And so, I smell this, little reward. I smell this, little reward. I smell. So pretty soon they start going down this track, and then they may lose their goal a little bit, but then they get back on track again. Eventually they find their food, or so for a human, maybe they find their job or their mate or whatever. But it's like we are geared toward targeting towards a direction. And when you have no direction, you just kind of float, right? You just don't have any real, and there's some big intrinsic value in our reward system for our brains that when we achieve a goal, and it keeps you moving forward. And so otherwise there's depression, there's all kinds of things that happen in our brains when we don't have some kind of something to shoot for, is something to aim for. So I thought that was really interesting for me. And so, it's almost like you need goals. Everybody needs goals, whether we set them or not, we still need them. And if you don't, they're the ones that kind of float around, don't know what they want, So anyway, it's like that thing. If you don't know what your target is, right? If you don't know where you're going, any place will get you there, right? So
yeah, that's interesting. I think even for me, it's, I'm a big Franklin planner user, and just writing stuff down and being able to check it off. It's I think it does the same thing. It's like that dopamine rush that you're accomplishing what you set out to get done today, and just writing it down and being able to check it off.
So excellent point there. That's an excellent point there, because that's what they say. Either way, you're going to get a dopamine rush. Every single day, you're going to get a dopamine rush. Do you want your dopamine rush to go towards the direction of where you want to go? Or do you want to, you got some kind of, I got a Facebook like, whatever, but it's not really going in the direction you want. So that's exactly right. And then the other thing, Stacey, that you said was that this thing about writing something down, that when you write something down, the brain and the hand connection, there's something, they said our thumbs are not meant to, they don't have that same connection as far as writing it down. It's an actual skill. When people have dementia, they cannot pick up a pencil and write. That becomes a thing, but that is a skill. Monkeys can't do that. I mean, this is like fascinating stuff. Monkeys cannot pick up a pen and write. They just don't have that, whatever. Maybe it's a thought process. I don't know, but that's what they're saying. That was one of the things. So when you take a pen, so we have that on our little sheet here, grab a pen and a notebook, because that cements it, that really makes a difference. So, you're right. And when we were doing the shower back in, what was that, Bo and Keely's shower, where Laura, we're at this restaurant, and Stacey pulls out her notebook. She's like, okay, so, and then we start writing this down. But I do that too. And I'm like, then I can check it off. And then I got, like you said, your dopamine response. I did something and it's towards my goal. And boom, I did something and it's towards my goal. And that's, so there are micro steps. That was the other thing. Micro steps, micro rewards, keep going you in the direction that you want to go. So,
I think that's right.
So,
well, and I think 2020 was, I think that only added on to the challenges of last year. Is a lot of reacting, and and so I imagine not this group here necessarily experienced it, but I don't know, but I would think a lot of people experienced, the challenge of having goals that they might have started off with, and then COVID affecting those for whatever reason, and then just kind of going on in this reactive state of just trying to get by every day, you know, and like just dealing with the stress of having to be quarantined or not being allowed to see friends or go out or whatever they dealt with, you know. So, and I think that is a challenge, and we're not out of it right now, of course, but you know, but there's hope on the horizon that things will be better with the vaccine and that kind of thing. And so, you know, I don't think we can let something like the pandemic stop us from still moving forward and pursuing something, you know, and
Right.
so now it's like, okay, well, I still want to be learning and growing, and I still want to be improving my life. And so then how do I do it within the confines of whatever it is we're dealing with right now?
So also with that is that, you know, there's certain things we can't control with the pandemic. So what can we do in our lives that we can control and feel like, you know, and so that's where we set the goals. It's like, and they say, you know, there's that 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, and it's 80% of it comes from us deciding that we're going to do this. And 20%, only 20% is the outside step. I mean, because it still comes from within, whether you're going to, I don't know, you know, get healthier or whatever. And, you know, hone your skills for a job or whatever. Like, I know everybody had problems with, you know, the whole pandemic and the whole job thing. That is difficult, but, you know, it also sometimes will force people to get outside of their comfort zone and start thinking about, well, is this what I want to do anyway? You know, maybe this is my wake up call. So, yeah, that's kind of a personal question for everybody to answer themselves, but it is that we have more control than we think we do. And so, you know, whatever you think you can do, you probably have even more than that, you know, and so you don't lie on that result of, well, this is happening to me, but how am I going to turn this around and turn this into something I want? So anyway, yeah. So
I think this year is just a turning point for a lot of people to be able to kind of take a refreshed look on what they want to work on and focus on. And so that's, you know, part of the reason why we wanted to have this discussion. But we have some suggestions as far as a goal setting process and some questions to ask yourself. And I'll go ahead and add it. We have a guide here that I'll add to the chat. And if you want to download it right now, you can. Otherwise, we'll send it in email as well. But we'll just walk through a few of these things that, you know, are good questions to ask yourself and steps to take for deciding what it is that you want to focus on. So do you want to walk through the questions, or do you want me to walk through them?
Doesn't matter. Let's look at, so that first page you see, like, that is Brianna at the top of Brickstone Heights, right? Like, let's remember, like, I think about that, and, you know, that was a goal of hers. That was her own little thing, and the visualization of getting there. And so it was kind of appropriate because it was quite out there. That was the other thing about goals, is that the bigger they are.
I can share my screen here if we want.
Bigger,
and how did you get up there?
That is in Norway, Pulpit Rock, and it's a hike. So like you hike to the top of this fjord
with not a real good trail. The trail was not very marked. But the thing is, that was the other thing I thought was interesting, that bigger goals have more impact. Like we set up, sometimes people say, well, I'm going to drink more water. So, I mean, you know, those don't have a lot of impact, right? So the ones that have big impact, people tend to hit that better, have a better result than the ones who just go for the smaller ones, which I thought was interesting. Normally you think if it's a big impact, right, you're going to be like overwhelmed. It's not true. Like that is what really like pushes people, that you take steps along the way. But I found that was as far as statistics go, like the bigger goal, you're more likely to hit that. I found that interesting. So
yeah. So so we have a list of questions here that we think are helpful in terms of deciding what would be helpful to focus on in the year, you know, and taking a few days or taking a week to really stop and think about these things. Like I personally feel the pressure of, okay, before January 1st, I want to know what I'm going to focus on. Like it's like this internal thing that I feel like I have to have it set, that I already know what my goals are going to be for the next year. And, you know, no, of course not. That's not the case. There's so much going on around the holidays for most people anyways, that it would be helpful to start off the year taking some days and thinking about what really is going to make the biggest difference in my life if I worked on this one thing. You know, what would be most impactful for my current happiness or my joy or my relationships or my health, and taking some time to really meditate on that and think about those things so that you can come to what the right goal is, you know. And so we can ask questions like, what is my purpose, which is such a huge overarching question that you know, maybe we can't come to the answer in a few days, but it's something to be thinking about.
And maybe it's not just maybe it's not
and-
just one purpose, you know, maybe it's like, what is my purpose in this realm, or what is my purpose in this, maybe in my job versus my life versus whatever. Like, we have different purposes in our lives, but overall, you know, I think there's like you know, what is it that kind of you think you're here for? Like, what are you adding, you know?
Well, my gifts, yeah. Well, like in my career, you know, what do I think my gifts are, my purpose is in my career? What is it within my relationships with other people, or in the community? So yes, totally.
Yeah.
I think it's multiple facets there. What do I love to do? What excites me?
So on that, what I love to do, that was the other thing that was really important. They talk about every single day, even if it's 10 minutes, and we have that at the end of this. We have at the end of this, that you should do something you love to do. Life should be like, we have to, like, sometimes people get caught up in the work cycle and whatever, and you know, but if you need to spend time, at least even for a little bit, on what is it you love to do. You just do it, right? You know, what brings you joy, like what excites you, whatever. Like, you need to be able to incorporate that daily, because life is about daily, right? That life is about everything. So if you are just working all the time, or if you are running around everywhere and you just kind of miss it on, you just get to bed and you're exhausted, it's like, you know. So if you find a little bit of something you love to do every single day, you feed your soul, and it kind of helps you keep going. So you have to do that. That was the other thing, was that these are really important things that keep people going with all the other stuff that they've got going on in their lives. So.
Yeah, well, and I think it's easy to let go of some of those things that you love and like feel like we don't have time for them. So I think it's also that part. What do I love to do that I don't get to do enough of right now? And maybe that's something I need to set a goal around. Where do you feel a gap in your life, or what are you missing? You know, and so that speaks for itself in terms of what, if I started doing this one thing, you know, how much of a difference would that make in a specific area of my life? And that's what all these questions too, the way they're written here is sort of like in a general term, but I mean, we could narrow in on any part of our lives, right? Like, so we could narrow in on our career. Where do I feel like there's a gap in my career? You know, and why? What is it? Let me think through the details of that. Or where do I feel like there's a gap in my relationship? You know, maybe with my significant other. And so something there, you know, could really make a big difference this year to focus on. What do I want to learn to do? What kinds of skills would I like to learn? Or, you know, new experiences would I like to have? What's working in my life? What do I love about my life? And that's also helpful to be thinking about what is going well. What do you want to continue to happen? Is there...
There's the Amazon truck.
Yeah, sorry, delivery.
So that thing about what I love about my life helps you kind of focus in on, okay, these are the things that kind of fulfill me and give me some joy. And, you know, that is another one of those things about that. The dopamine response, the feedback of, you know, this is what's going right in my life. And, you know, you need that, you know, everybody needs to have that piece of it. And then you can add more to that, you know. So if we're only focusing on what's wrong, then you get into this kind of downward spiral there. But oh god, so anyway,
Stopping here. And so then on the flip side of that, think considering what's not working. What do I wish was different? You know, so that's kind of in lines with like the gap or the missing in your life, and considering what could be a possible solution there, or what some ideas might be. What do I want? Oh, I skipped ahead here. What did I learn about myself in the last year? So, you know, this is a really interesting one, especially in light of the pandemic last year, because it was such an unusual, strange situation that we all were in and still are in. And so, you know, maybe you learned something interesting about yourself related to the changes we experienced. and how you handled them, or maybe how others handled them, and your reaction to that. But maybe there's something there that's insightful as far as what you want to focus on this year. Other things that are helpful to think about: what does my ideal day look like? And and so if we're busy running around feeling like we're doing a lot, like I'm really busy and yet I'm not very effective, like I'm not getting the things done that really matter in my life or in my job, or with my family, whatever it might be, then something's wrong there. We're getting a lot of tasks done, and yet it doesn't feel very meaningful, or it doesn't feel very effective. What do I want more of? So what kinds of things would be helpful, or that I would really enjoy if they were brought into my life? So, and then we have a set of questions that are more of a rating question. And so on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being highly active or highly agree, what number would you answer the following? And so asking yourself, am I fulfilled with my life right now? Am I living to my full potential? Does my life reflect what I value most? Do I challenge myself? And depending on what you rate each of those answers, there's potentially something there to focus on as well. If you don't feel like you're fulfilled, you rate yourself a 5, for example, something is missing. And so perhaps we go back to the prior set of questions to figure out, what is it? Why do I feel like I'm not fulfilled with where I'm at right now? Were you gonna say something?
I was gonna say, on the challenge myself, people do not, I shouldn't say people, all people, but I do feel like we have so much more potential than we give ourselves credit for. And when we challenge ourselves, we really find that potential. Like, people get into their comfort zones. And so you see things on Facebook, whatever, they say, get outside your comfort zone. But there's some real truth to that. There's some real meaning and value to that. And it comes back again to that brain science of, we need to challenge ourselves, because we were kind of geared for that all along. We're just always, our brains and our whatever, we're forward seeking people, we forward movement. And if you don't challenge yourself, back in the day in evolutionary times, there were some challenges that we had to deal with, which we don't have to do that anymore. We're pretty complacent. We're pretty comfortable. We don't have to worry about saber-toothed tigers or whatever. But they found that, when you do these things that kind of light up those little parts of your brain, you get excited about life. You get excited about more, and there's a comfort level that makes you a little too, just kind of complacent, and you don't go forward. You just kind of get, well, it's all right. And so then those that's when they talk about, some people start getting depressed. There's nothing to get excited about, whatever. So we need those challenges more than we realize.
Well, and it's that reward system again, right? So when you set yourself on a path towards something that's difficult, it helps build that resilience factor, and it helps you feel pride in what you're doing. And so if we don't have that, if we're never working toward that, or if I feel like I'm in a place where I'm pretty good, like my life is pretty good right now, I don't really need to work toward much, you fall into that comfort zone.
You fall into a comfort zone, and then there's and you get, that's okay for a while, but eventually you will get bored. Eventually you'll feel like,
something will feel missing.
Something will feel missing. You need to always have something to shoot for. And it doesn't always have to be a big thing, but it does have to be something that's going to excite you and make you want to kind of stay. So the longest lived people, when they study that, there's always a purpose, and it doesn't have to be a big purpose. It could be just gardening, but for whatever reason, it's a purpose for them that they feel like gets them excited about getting up every single day. And I, that's the big thing. The big takeaway is that you have to get outside a little bit, and going out, getting into the physical piece of it, getting outside in the cold, getting uncomfortable with that is actually good for you. There's a hormesis theory or whatever, not even a theory, I think it's been proven that when you challenge yourself, it's like a little bit of poison makes you stronger, right? If you have too much, then it's not good, right? But a little bit makes you stronger, and it makes you that much more, I don't know, I guess you know, I hate to use the thing, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but it's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of that. Like if you're just so comfortable all the time, like you just don't do anything, then you just become complacent. And you know, the fire in your life and everything are when you kind of challenge yourself and you step outside that comfort zone. And so it's been proven. It's been, you know, you don't have to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro or whatever, but you do need to do more than you think you can, you know, and then that helps you to have that zest for life, the joie de vivre or whatever. So yeah, so
Yeah.
joie de vivre. How do you pronounce it?
Well, any other thoughts or anything you would add, you know, just from your experience with this topic, or, you know, any questions or other things that you would add in there?
I think you have a good list of questions. I just think it's just having the discipline to take the time to spend with those questions and really just give them a lot of contemplation. And we just tend to rush through things and get stuff done. And I think you've got a great list there of things that I know I want to spend some more time just really thinking about, spending some time with.
Yeah, me too. It takes a
So
lot of intentionality, and I feel like these questions are really good about like focusing in on what it is that I want to do for myself and take that time ahead of this year or my day or whatever.
Right.
And like even bringing a book, a notebook, and a pen when you go
Right.
to a meeting so that you can write stuff down. That's just a little bit of intentionality, but it's make a big difference.
Totally true. And so one of the things we talked about too was like, well, should we tell people that they should focus on one goal or two goals or three goals? And we're like, well, you know what? Focus on what calls to you, but spend some time doing it. I think that's why we didn't want to call this New Year's resolutions. This is not a New Year's resolution. This is about some changes, but a good time. It's, you know, it's good. It marks the day to kind of go forward. And so in that regard, it's like, you know, it becomes a good, like, set point to start with, but it does take some time to sit down and think about it. And then that really, I think that's what's going to be the important thing. People set out goals of like, oh, you know, I want to lose weight, or I want to, but it's very arbitrary and there's not a whole lot of thought. And so when you do set your goals, that as you go through this, you know, then we say like writing goals, it's like, so you write it down on a piece of paper, right? And so again, you get that brain hand writing connection that has been proven over and over again. But also then you come down to, again, that brain science of micro rewards, and that when you can break it down into usable steps every single day, then they're not so overwhelming, right? When you break it down, it's like, well, I'm not going to go run a marathon tomorrow, right? Nobody does that. Nobody's going to lose weight tomorrow. Nobody's going to like gain some big salary, whatever. But, you know, if you start writing it down and then you say, okay, these are the steps I'm going to take to that. And you kind of do it day in and day out and day in and day out. And those dopamine responses keep happening. And that is what keeps people on track. And so when you lose some of that, so, you know, read your goals every day, or write your goals down and then read them in the morning. And it's not like, oh my God, this is like, I need to read this, like, you know, but it's a reminder because it helps keep you on track.
Yeah, I think go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say, I feel like the way that you've outlined this as like the process and these questions, it could seem like, well, what are these questions? Like, how is this going to help me with my day-to-day? But instead of like just starting with the daily or even smaller than that, you can wind up going, like you said, like it's setting you up for a path. So maybe those things that you might set for yourself for the daily aren't really the core issue of like what you're actually trying to get to. But when you take a step back and say like, okay, is it that I want to run a mile every day? Or is it that I want to, work on my peace in my life? And maybe running can be part of that. But like, I feel this is a better way of like achieving big goals in terms of like what you actually are wanting to achieve than just
Right. So micro steps and micro rewards, that was the other thing that they talk about, that's how our brain works. If you do too big of a goal, it's good to have a good goal, but if you know, you can get overwhelmed with that. So if you do micro steps on a regular basis or daily basis or whatever, and then you micro reward. So you say, I did a good job today. So, you know, whatever, you know, I did a good job doing this, or I did a good job doing this, that feedback is more important than other feedback outside. So our own internal self-talk that you hear a lot about is more important than the external. Even though we always are looking for some external feedback, it still comes down to like how we feel about ourselves and what we did. And so if we can remind ourselves, are we,
Well,
so go ahead.
I want to go
Yeah.
back for just a second though, because I think the questions though are like as big of a part of this process as the goals themselves, because you know, like if we try to rush over them and just pick some goals that we think are the right things to focus on, to your point, Laura, maybe those aren't actually the most effective goals as far as bringing me more fulfillment in my life. And maybe they're goals I think I should be doing, you know, but so like even taking just 10 minutes a day for the next however many days it takes to answer those questions, or to, you know, to take one question at a time and just do 10 minutes with like your morning coffee, or like when you're in the shower getting ready in the morning or something, like, you know, maybe it's just finding pockets of time where you can think about those answers instead of thinking about something else that, you know, you would otherwise be doing, and focusing on that.
So there's some actual science that when you, like, let's say you decide to ask yourself 1 or 2 questions before you go to bed, and then you go to sleep, then when you wake up in the morning, and if you do this on a regular basis, you'll find some perspective. Like, so when you ask these questions of your brain, because your brain is still working throughout the night, but if you kind of prime it, so like, okay, you know, whether it's like, you know, what is my ideal day, or what's my purpose, or what is it that is going to bring me joy, you know, if you ask a few of these questions right before you're falling asleep, that the studies show that your brain will kind of internalize those and start working toward that. And so if you, when you first wake up in the morning, when you first wake up and before you're fully woken up, there's a little bit of a fog area or whatever, but actually it's full of information. So if you just kind of can listen, you know, just listen to that and see if you get any answers. And you know, it's kind of been shown that if you continue to do that, eventually you will. And so those are some things too. It's like, well, ask yourself some of these questions that you want to know before you go to bed. Just kind of contemplate a little bit. Don't spend a lot of time on it. Don't whatever, but go to bed with that idea and let your brain do the work overnight, and then see what you hear in the morning. Because the studies show that the brain that's when it's processing all of this stuff. When you're asleep, not when you're awake and thinking, it's when you're asleep and out of it. So it's pretty fascinating stuff.
That's how we have those wild dreams.
That's we do. And it's the body, you know, this book that I'm reading, it's called Go Wild right now. And they talk about that. And it's like, they used to think like, so when you have these dreams of these saber-tooth tigers or whatever, it was like, it was the way the body could protect themselves against some of these wild whatever. So they said there is some real, like there's priming going on in our dreams, which is interesting. And so anyway, that was one of the things. It's like, if you know, kind of don't spend a lot of time, but maybe ask a few questions like, okay, and then just see what comes up over a period of time, that there's usually some answers there. So
yeah. So out of that, you know, ideally we get something to focus on, whether that's one goal, whether that's more than one goal, but a few things that we decide we want to really, you know, put some intentions around these things for this year or for this particular time. And that's the other thing too, is it's going to be unique to whatever goals you're working on. And so you might have a goal that's going to go through the rest of 2021 because perhaps it's a behavioral goal that you're focusing on. Like for myself, for example, one of my goals is I want to reduce sort of like frivolous spending, you know, like the spending on just clothes or even like groceries, you know, like sometimes I'll buy like groceries I don't actually need. It's just like extra fun stuff. And And so I want to reduce some of that and instead focus that on things that would really matter in my life, or in my family's life. And so that's more of a behavioral goal that I would be setting through the end of the year. But something with a deadline, like a marathon, or like a certain event that's happening, or skill, or an experience, perhaps there's an end date for that we want to work backwards from. And so once we've identified what those goals are, then, you already previewed the idea of defining what these micro steps are, or micro habits that you would then start to create for yourself. And, I don't know if you want to speak more about, why resolutions fail, but a lot of it is like trying to bite off more than you can chew, and not having a real plan for how you're going to do it. And so it's these habits that you either are doing daily to progress toward your goals, or if it's not something that can be done daily, it's weekly, or it's scheduled into your calendar to happen. And so this is where it becomes harder, because if you're setting a goal that you've already been working on, maybe you did it last year, or you've done it for multiple years, and it hasn't been fulfilled yet, you have to have a real honest look at yourself and say, how come? Like what micro steps did I take to try to progress toward that goal? And how come they didn't work? What barriers got in the way? And try to see if you can problem solve, like, what is the hiccup that prevents you from working toward this thing that you keep wanting to work on? And so, so taking some time to think about, what are those micro steps? What are those habits you can put in place that you can do every day, or you can do consistently, and you can schedule into your calendar, which will eventually, over time, make difference toward your goal. And you'll look back after a couple months, after 6 months, after a year, and say, I did the work, and now I get the reward from it.
Yeah. And so when you're making your goals, I think the other thing is like, why? What is it that I think I'm going to gain once I get my goal? Right. And so if you can understand why you want something, and then you remind yourself, kind of why, and then what, then the how and the when kind of starts taking place. And we've heard that before, I think. But I feel like you have to understand why you want something. Like, why is it that I want that? And it's like, do I feel like it's going to fulfill my life? And if that's going to fill my life, well, are we sure? And there's some deeper questions to ask there, but some people just want to lose weight for what, I don't know. But if you focus on, I want to be in better health, I want to feel better about myself in my clothes, I want to feel better, in my brain even now, so if you can keep rewarding yourself, if you can keep finding your purpose and your reason of why, you keep, again, fulfilling that little dopamine response, because I'm going to feel better, because I'm going to produce better, because I'm going to look better, like that's all important. And that keeps you on that goal.
Yeah. Well, and those micro rewards you talked about, I think, are important too. So like, even if I tell myself, like, if I have a nutrition goal, I'm going to drink X amount of water. If I say I'm going to do it for the next week, that seems more daunting than saying I'm going to do it for the next 2 days. And so then when I do it for the next 2 days, I can say, okay, nice job. Let's do it for another 2 days. I can keep building on that.
Right.
So that's where it really comes down to breaking it down, where it almost seems too easy. Like, today, I just want to do this one thing, or I want to do these 2 things.
The micro step.
And then, okay, I did it. Now I feel that reward response, and I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And so like you're promoting yourself to continue that habit.
And you're encouraging yourself. Self-talk is way more important than we give credit for. And we get dopamine response for ourselves when we say, good job, Irene, you did this well, or good job, you, or whatever, like, you build on that and your brain responds to that. It's like, okay, well, that felt good, so I'm going to do this, and that feels good. And that's how you kind of keep that loop going.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know we're going to wrap up here.
Yeah, we're going to wrap
up. We wanted to share just a daily life checklist. And these are some things that, are really great daily practices that, regardless of whatever goals you put in place, if you start focusing on each of these things every day, they're naturally going to improve your life, just because of what they do for you, for your body, or for your mind. And so in return, it's going to keep you more motivated to work on your goals. So, first off, we'd say start your day by rereading your goals. So that's also going to help remind you of what you're working toward so that you can work on those daily habits that you've set for yourself. You can focus on the reward. And it always keeps things front and center of what your priority is.
So yeah, if we remember that our brains are like always looking for a target, they're always seeking a target. So if you're rereading your goals, you're priming your brain to remember the target. It's always looking for a target. So, feed
It's
that.
going to go wherever you tell it to go.
It's going to go wherever
So,
you tell it to go.
Yeah.
And it wants that. Like it wants a target. And so when you reread your goals on a regular basis, you're constantly refocusing, but you're also like giving your direction to your brain on what to focus on. And then your actions follow.
Yes.
So
get morning sunlight in your eyes. You want to speak to that?
So the get morning sunlight in your eyes, like that's something we've been talking about, but I hear it over and over and over again, especially from these neuroscientists that say, we work on a 24-hour circadian rhythm-ish, 24-hour-ish. But so you get outside in the morning, you get sunlight in your eyes, and it wakes you up, and it sets up your day to be productive during the day. And then it actually like allows the melatonin response to happen in the evening, because now we know where we're at in our 24-hour cycle. So we know in the morning when we get light in our eyes, oh, it's daytime, right? So when you go to bed or when in the evening, the lower part, this is interesting that the eyes, if you have sunlight or light, any kind of light, like electricity light coming in to the top part of your eyes, it's going to recognize that as sunlight, right? Which is morning, right? So you don't want to do that, right? So if you're going to have any kind of light, you want it in the evening. As far as when we get down into the evening, you get down to dimming the lights a little bit, getting away from your devices an hour or two before you go to bed. And then, trying to kind of limit that top down or top light into your eyes, because that's what signals sunlight, right? So I that's really important. I thought that was really
Which
interesting.
is number 5 also. But
okay, so yeah, so
no, it's all good, but it's all connected.
It's kind of connected,
related.
exactly.
It's like setting your body up to like be most productive when it's supposed to be most productive, and then prepare for sleep so that you can restore everything and wake up the next day ready to go again.
So if you think about a 24-hour cycle, that's what our brain, that's what we are meant to be, so that helps with that.
Yep. Do something you love, even if it's only for 10 minutes. We talked about this already, but if you can figure out what that is for yourself, like an act of self-love, self-care, what could you do for 10 minutes that's going to make a difference?
What do you love to do? I think that's so important. Like, what do you love to do? If it's dance, if it's read, if it's go out and walk, I don't know, like find what is it that you love?
Yep.
Even do it for 5-10 minutes. It's going to make a difference.
Yeah. Move your body. Self-explanatory, I think.
So the move your body part was just the fact that we are meant to move throughout your day. Instead of sitting around at the computer, whatever, you got to get up. You got to go look outside, look at the horizon. That was the other thing of this neuroscientists. They talk about our brains. We want to look at the horizon. We want to look away from our screens. We're focused vision like this.
But also, it's like taking regular breaks throughout your workday is going to sort of like refire all those metabolic processes that are happening. And it also helps spark creativity. Like it kind of resets your mindset a little bit. So if I'm working at my job and I'm just sitting in my chair for 3 hours straight, that is tough. Like that does affect your kind of your mental state, and can sometimes deplete motivation. So like,
we're not meant to
move as much as you can.
Right?
Choose to move. Number 5, I think we pretty much covered that when we talked about sunlight in your eyes. Like avoid watching those screens, using those devices. Instead, get your pen and paper and do number 6, which is list what you're grateful for. Or you could think about it just in your head if you want. But you want to speak to this?
Yeah. So the thing when we talk about this dopamine response during the daytime, when I did this goal and boom, I get a dopamine hit, and I do this and I get a dopamine hit. And it's like yeah. So then when you come down to the end of the day and you start writing about what you're grateful for, so then your serotonin levels come up, and serotonin is about your internal like hit, your internal response. So dopamine sometimes can be an outside response or whatever, but the serotonin levels of when I say what I'm grateful for, then we're hitting into our internal response of, this feels good. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. I'm, proud of what I did today or whatever. And it's just a little bit of a, continuation, but not, it's I don't know if I call it a softer response, but it's more of a relaxing response. And, so like if you do that at the end of the day, then you also kind of, serotonin is, helpful for sleep. And so if we relax, we get into more relaxed state. And so then now you have your 24 hours day,
Well,
so
it's also a positive mindset to end your day with instead of anything else, like, because you're thinking about the things that you appreciate in your life. So and it's also setting the stage that you attract more of that into your life. These are things I'm grateful for. Okay, universe, send me more of that. I want more of those things.
And serotonin also is part of the, the oxytocin response. So when you have oxytocin, it's a feel good. And these are all like hormones and neurotransmitters and stuff. So there's some real scientific fact to this. This isn't just like, woo woo. This is real true thing that, serotonin levels, oxytocin response is the feel good hormone. You can relax and you can go to bed. So it becomes kind of a full cycle of using the day to be as responsive and productive and forward thinking, to getting towards your goals. So, yeah. So that's it. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Good stuff, you guys. Thank you. A lot to
Well,
think
thank you
about.
for joining.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Keep us
And,
posted on your response, whatever your thoughts are, and let us know, give us feedback. So appreciate
Will
you
do.
joining. So
Yeah.
Thanks for putting it together. I hope I sent you a text. If you could email me this 5-page document, that'd be great.
that'd
Yes.
be great. Perfect.
Yeah.
We will. We'll send it an email.
Sounds good.
So
Okay.
All right. All right. Take
Thank
care,
you.
guys.
Guys.
Okay. Thank you.
awesome.
Bye.
Thank you.
Happy
Bye.
2021.
Yes.
That's right.